All right, hey, Drawing and Painting 2. We're going to go over your first assignment. You can pause and start this again if you want. You can watch the whole thing. You can go through the slideshow yourself if you feel confident. Otherwise, I'm just going to give you some details and examples. So, what we're going to talk about for this first one is the principles of design. So, the elements are used to create the principles of design. Here are the elements of design on the left, the principles of design on the right. It's always just a good resource to be able to go look back and see it visually represented for you. It's just like an illustration. How do they go together? So let's get my face out of here. Move my head. Can I not move my head? I don't know if I can. The elements of art are like the words, and the principles of design are like the sentences. So you use the elements of art to create the principles. And you'll kind of see that as we go here. I gotta move my face somehow. Hold on one second. My head is in the way, but I still want you to see me. Hi. Okay. So survey art focused on the elements of art. We were always talking about in each project what element we were working on. Drawing and painting focuses more on the principles of design and on personal creativity and on critical thinking about art. So how can you problem solve to create art? Today, tomorrow, over the weekend, this will be due Sunday night. What you're going to do is take visual notes that illustrate the principles of design. So what's an illustration? It's just a visualization of an idea or a depiction of something. So you read a book, they draw an illustration for you. Or you look at a cookbook and there's an illustration of the food possibly. So it's a drawing, a sketch, a picture to help you visualize the concept you're looking at. You can format your notes however you want to. It could be a mind map, so like you can put principal design in the middle of the mind map, and then kind of do your pictures around the outside. It could be kind of random sketches, like in the top right, they've kind of like created this different picture of some of the different elements put together. Or you could go and make really organized notes. It's really up to you how you want to format it. So the first one. Pattern. Pattern is a design in which lines, shapes, forms, or colors are repeated. Patterns can be regular or irregular, meaning one element repeated or elements repeated together in a form of a pattern. So in the example in the slideshow, these little lines are repeated in a pattern next to each other. If we had gone like triangle, circle, triangle, triangle, circle, triangle, that's a pattern. Or it could be green triangle, red triangle, blue triangle. So you're using different elements to create those patterns. Here are some examples. So in like the top left here, we're looking at different lines are creating pattern. They're not just creating pattern in color, but in how the repetition of the line is. Same thing in this one. We're creating a pattern of line. Even though they're moving in different directions, we're creating a pattern over and over again. Plaid is a pattern of line. It's not only pattern of line, it actually uses line, shape, and color to create pattern. It could also be like the same image repeated over and over again. So here we have the D's. We had a blue D forward, gray D backwards, blue D forward, gray D backwards, black, it's something that's, you're using repetition basically. It doesn't have to be the same thing over and over again. So you could mix and match different things. So like the one behind my face here is using color and shape. So it's a similar shape all the way around, but they're making pattern by alternating colors. Contrast is the next principle. So contrast refers to the arrangement of objects, the words are good. Contrast refers to the arrangement of opposite elements and effects. So you can use light and dark colors, smooth and rough textures, large and small shapes. Contrast can be used to create variety, visual interest, or drama. So here, even in this slideshow example, we've got orange against blue, contrasting colors. They're opposites on the color wheel, right? So here's a couple different ways to do this. On the top left, we don't only have opposite colors, so our complementary colors, red and green. We also have contrast in shape or in size of those shapes. In the bottom left here, we've got a lot of really straight geometric line contrasted with colorful organic line. Here we've got black and white, so contrasting colors, and also contrasting line direction. In the top right, we have contrasting colors, which are our complementary colors again. And in the background, you can see the yin-yang sign, contrast for sure. Balance is the next one. Balance is one of the key principles of design. It refers to the way visual elements are arranged so that their visual weight harmonizes with each other. So balance is about visual balance. So like really like think about the scales being tipped, right? There's a few different ways to create balance. Balance is key, but sometimes it can be hard to understand. So there's symmetrical balance. Like if we look at our faces, they're pretty much generally symmetrical. One side is almost exactly the same as the other. Or if you look at a butterfly's wings, the image is just mirrored. Now symmetrical balance could be cut down the middle this way, vertically, or it can be cut at a horizon line. It depends on how you want to shake it up. Asymmetry is the one that's hard for people to understand. So it's usually unequal objects, but they're weighted visually. So one element might dominate by being really large, but then you have a bunch of little elements on the other side, and they balance each other out. I'll show you some examples too. And then radial balance is a form of symmetrical balance, but everything radiates from the center, creating a pattern. So here we've got a mandala that is everything's radiating from the center. So you're creating radial balance there. On the bottom left, you've got your butterfly. Here, balance in a principle of art. So here we've got the tipping piece in the middle. We've got our really big donut with a hole in the middle that's closer to the center. But then way farther off to the right, we have our little non-hold rock or whatever this is. They're balancing each other out visually because this one's closer to the center. This one is farther away, so it draws your eye out. This one has a hole in the center, so it seems like it has a void. This one doesn't. So there's different ways to balance. And then the one in the center is is asymmetry. So if you cut it down the middle, you can't fold it in half and they look the same. They look different. One side has darker colors with more points, so it has much less purple, which is less visually strong. So the black and the brown are more visually strong. But on the other side, there's more purple, but by creating voids in the shapes, you're creating more interest here. So your eye always has to move back and forth, so it's equally balanced. On the top, it shows you another example of those different kinds of balance. Definitely can be a tricky one to create asymmetrical balance well. Emphasis, or emphasis, is a principle of art which refers to the use of visual elements to draw attention to a certain area. So you're emphasizing something, you're creating a focal point. A lot of people confuse this with contrast. Emphasis can be made with contrast, but it doesn't have to be. It could be isolating something. It could be creating directional lines that point to something. It could be contrast. It could just be the different content. So in this picture on the left, our placement of something is creating an emphasis. So the person in the middle has the light bulb above their head, and that is creating emphasis over that person because of the placement of that image. So here on the top middle, all these beads are pointed to the central bead in the middle. So we're creating emphasis by directing our view that way. This is on the top left is a picture of not Marcel Duchamp. Gosh, I'm brain farting on this guy's name. It's a guy in a suit and his face is an orange. So by content, we're creating emphasis because usually there's not like a face a person's face isn't an orange, right? So you're creating emphasis just by content. On the bottom left, we're using contrast in color form. On the top right, we're using void as contrast. So everything is really, really tight knit design, crazy design. And then in the middle here, it lacks design. So your eye is drawn to it. Here in the bottom, placement is creating emphasis as well. So this girl is placed really close in the forefront, and that creates emphasis on her. And the one behind my face that you can't see, there's a little bunch of little gold coins back here that are duller, and then there's a bigger gold coin in the front that's brighter. The placement of that is creating emphasis on it. Sorry if I'm talking fast, but I'm trying to get through this quickly for you. Proportion and scale. These sometimes get confused, but they are different. Scale and proportion are both design elements that have to do with size, but scale is just the size of one object. So you go downtown, you see the cherry and the spoon. Cherry and a spoon are not usually that big. The scale is huge, right? It's just one object of art. So it's not referencing something else in its thing. It's just a big thing. Or if you go to Chicago and you see the big bean, the big metal bean, the scale of it is huge. It's just really big, right? But proportion refers to the size of parts in an object or in like one singular artwork. So like the proportions of our face are relatively even, and we know where things are supposed to go because they're proportionate to each other. You can use proportion in a distorted way. They don't have to be that way. As in this next one where we're going to look at scale first. Okay. So scale here is like on the top left, there's these sculptures of like twist balloon animals, right, that clowns make, but they're giant, they're huge, right? And the scale of them is really big and more than lifelike, more than what they would be. And then we've got the cherry on the spoon that we're all is easy to recognize for us in Minnesota. And then on the other scope of that, the top right, this sculpture, looking at the cigarette, is literally that size. So cigarette might be this big, that sculpture is this big, the scale of it's tiny, right? These little tiny busts right here are being held in somebody's hand. So their heads are this big. The scale of them is just really small. They're proportionate. They look realistic, but the scale is just different. It's kind of just how big or small is something and is that creating an effect, right? Proportion, on the other hand, is the relationship of the things within the art. So here we've got Mona Lisa. This is disproportionate. That's not usually what she looks like. The hands are tiny, the face is giant, so the proportions within the art are kind of messed up. If we look at the top right, a hand can't grab, that's a really sad picture, actually. I did not realize that was the two towers. A hand can't grab an airplane. It's just the proportions are off within it. Here we have correct proportions. So you're creating proportions within a face or a body. You can use different things like the size of the eye to proportion the rest of the face. And then behind my head here in the slides, there's a fisherman with a giant fish underwater. The proportions are just off. Rhythm and movement. These two are really hard to find a difference, and if you Google them, you'll probably get similar images for each. I think they're pretty interchangeable. Movement is the path a viewer's eyes takes through a work of art, so movement can be directional lines, edges, shapes, and color. This image just on the slideshow has kind of a movement up and off the page. It's using color to move you up because it's a gradient, but it's using the line as well. Rhythm is created when one or more elements are used repeatedly to create a feeling of movement. This, again, has that as well. It has one or more element that's repeated over and over again to create movement. They overlap. They can be the same thing. It's really hard to kind of distinguish. So here are some that show rhythm and movement, and the next slide does the same thing. You can visually show rhythm by repetition of objects. So the background is petals repeated over and over again, and it kind of gives like a rhythm to it. Same thing with Van Gogh's sky. It gives us kind of like rhythm of movement in the background. Or like these people dancing, because their hands are all held together, your eye is visually moving throughout the entire piece always. The next ones help show movement a little bit more because they physically are creating elements that try to mimic movement in a two-dimensional non-moving object. And that can be done in realistic terms. Or this one on the top right is cubism. It's not really super realistic, it's abstracted. Or behind my head here is just line work that's used to create movement. Harmony and unity are interchangeable completely. Some people call it harmony, some people call it unity, some people say harmony and unity, they're the same word. It's a principle that creates cohesiveness, and cohesiveness is just like what's similar, what brings it together. So specifically, harmony uses the elements, so kind of our elements making our principles, color, line, shape, form, value, space, texture as a vehicle, or kind of they're just using them to create a sense of togetherness amongst separate parts. So bringing your piece together, what makes it a whole? Oh, I did not add pictures for Unity. Well, you can Google Unity. Maybe I'll add some when I post this, but it's not going to be in the video. We'll go way back up to the top here. And if we look at harmony or unity, it's a picture of a circle with little people all the way around, and they're using similar pieces to create a context of something similar. This poster itself has unity because they're using the same image in different ways to show you the different kinds of principles of design. When I post this, I'll add another slide that gives you some examples to make your life a little easier so you can have some visual examples to look at. So what are you going to do? You're going to create illustrations for each principle. Some principles might have more than one in them. So like scale or proportion, you can choose scale or you can choose proportion, whatever you want to. Don't make these like tiny. These should be roughly like maybe 3 by 3 inches smallest. If you want to go bigger, you can go bigger. That's totally fine. You can use any old notebook paper, printer paper, whatever you have at home, whatever is to your disposal. Pencils, colored pencils, markers, crayons, you name it, you can use it. Quality counts though. You have Thursday, Friday, and then the weekend. And if you don't really have supplies at home and you want to work on it over the weekend, Friday is the pickup day for supplies. So 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I will be at school in the front entrance handing out supplies. So come grab your stuff then. You can use cartoons to do this. You can use abstract doodles. You can use realistic drawing. Whatever it is that you can think of to create these things. They should be somewhat original. Don't just like Google and try to copy it. I've seen what people have done out there. Try to think and problem solve and think and like look at some of the examples and figure out how you can represent it yourself. Let me know if you have questions or concern. Each element, it's not an element, it's a principle. Each principle is worth 10 points, so that's a 70-point assignment. If you have questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, bye.